What's up, everyone? Welcome to this webinar on the 5 profit strategies that in 90 minutes or so at the end of this session, at the end of this webinar, you will actually be able to implement within your practice, showcase for your team, get it going, and will start making a difference almost immediately. And if you are here because you love patient care, but you feel like the business side of your clinic has slowly turned into a second full-time job you were never really prepared or trained for, then this is for you and you are in the exact right place. If you're someone who is looking at practices like Dr. Gabrielle Lyon or Dr. Will Cole, Cynthia Thurlow, or any of these others out there who have had substantial growth, and you're thinking to yourself, I know I could build something like that if I just had the business side dialed in and I got the business side right, then the next 90 minutes of this webinar was completely built for you. Now, I want to say right out the gate and be very clear before we go any further that if your practice feels like it's overwhelming, if your revenue is feeling capped, if you're working harder than you ever have, but not seeing the return that you expected, monetarily, time-wise, emotionally-wise, it's not because of your patient care. And I'm sure you probably have got that piece of it figured out. It's because no one has ever really taught you how to run a business. In medical school, the boards that you've passed, the conferences that you go to, the continuing education, none of it prepares you to price correctly, build systems, lead a team, or scale without burnout. So if you've been feeling like you've been trying to figure things out by being scrappy, working longer hours, or taking that fake it till you make it approach, which too many people do and is some of the worst advice I was ever given, I want to assure you that that is not a character flaw. It's what people do when they don't have framework, when they don't have a success strategy or a blueprint to really work off of. So before we really get into it, I want to get a feel for who all is in the room and put in the chat for me what it is that you're currently facing right now within your practice. And is it you're constantly busy and feeling overwhelmed? Are revenue capped despite how hard you're working and it feels like the hours aren't computing into more profits for your clinic? Are you feeling that your clinic depends entirely too much on you, and without you being there, things start to fall apart and you're sort of tied to the daily operations? Or do you actually have some systems that are existing, but the execution isn't consistent? And so go ahead and put that in the chat for me, and that will help me kind of figure out what direction we need to go and how I can tailor this session for who's in the room. All right. I will share with you my bio in just a moment, but before I do, I want to assure you that I did not start where I am at today. And as the saying goes, in many, many cases, it takes 20 years to make an overnight success. For me, in 2015, I was a 2-year entrepreneur, meaning I had opened up my business in 2013. And by 2015, I was getting eviction notices from my landlord. I was worried every day on how I was going to make payroll each and every month. I was barely paying myself anything. And as a result, my credit dropped from the 790s from prior to opening up my business when I was in law enforcement and SWAT and had a job where I was not the one responsible for signing the front of the check. I was responsible for flipping that over and signing the back of the check, endorsing it, and then getting that money put in my account. So it went from the 790s to the 400s. And from the outside, when other people were looking at what I had created, it really looked like I was running a successful business. And it was interesting how people were somewhat envious a lot of times, but that internal voice was saying, if you only knew what the reality was. And I wasn't doing anything that I knew to be, I was doing everything I knew, but I didn't know nearly what I needed to know. And so I was in total survival mode and just white knuckling it every single day. But all of that changed in later 2015 when I met up with a client who was much further along in his business journey than I was. He had a successful business and he was about 20 or so years into it. And he invited me to a mastermind with other experienced business owners. And for the very first time, I found that I wasn't needing to do guesswork anymore. I had structure from the group that was in the room. It was a small group of about 6 to 8 people in this little mastermind. And for the first time, I had structure, I had framework, I had people who actually knew how to run a business and were willing to help me stop taking so many arrows in my back and help me start building a successful business on my own. And that experience completely changed my trajectory. One belief that I want to challenge right now and right out the gate is the idea that you have to first just look at patients, that you just need more patients or you just need more leads, because more leads into a broken system does not create freedom. It actually creates more chaos. If follow-up is inconsistent or your pricing isn't clear, your delegation is messy, and your business systems aren't as dialed in as your clinical procedures are, more volume just accelerates your burnout. And in the real cost of this whole thing of not fixing what's broken isn't just financial. It shows up mentally, and the weight that you carry. It's physically. If you've ever read the book, The Body Keeps a Score, it's certainly as someone in the medical field, you understand the science behind it, and it also shows up at home. Missed dinners, missed vacations, things that weren't able to actually come through. Late days. You're leaving in the wee hours in the morning, getting home late at night, you're doing charting on the weekends. Like, it takes its toll at home as well. And some of you may be feeling that. I know that in 2015, I absolutely was. So here's what I can promise you today, that by the end of the session, as long as you stick around through the end, you will understand exactly why your practice feels harder than it should. And more importantly, you'll see how it's 100% fixable. So with that being said, let's dive into it. All right. So here I am today. And this is the important part, because you have to trust that I am somebody that you can take guidance from, and a trusted advisor or mentor, right? Because you're giving me some of your time and it's on a very important topic. So I've been married to my beautiful bride for over 20 years, and I have a beautiful 16-year-old son who is just the light of our lives. And that picture that's on the screen is, I think we all, as parents, as our kids start getting older, we just want them to be babies. I intentionally put this picture on here because, well, we were all babies in this picture. My wife and I, certainly. This is almost 17 years ago, but this was in 2009. And so I had a handful of years where I was a dad and a husband without the stress of the business. But in 2013, that's where we started our first business, sold it in 2019. I'm also the owner today of Legacy Primary Care. I'm on the business side. I'm not on the clinical side. I think that's important to note, although my nickname is the Profit Doc, which came from my good friend and previous client, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. I am not a doctor. I focus entirely on the business side. I focus on the side that my business partner, who is the medical director, that she was not taught in school. So I leave all of the clinical stuff to her. She leaves the business side to me. Between the two of us, we've got a very well-rounded business and the structure, and it's proving itself to be quite successful. In addition, the primary care, I part owner with my business partner in the Beyond Health Institute, Profit Practice, which is our private business coaching that has been around since 2019, Ignition Systems, which is a HIPAA CRM software. And I'll be sharing more with that about that with you right out the gate, actually, because of how significant it can be in changing the profitability of your practice. I'm also a co-owner of another software company called FitPro Tracker. So since 2019, as I mentioned about Profit Practice, I've been teaming up with clinics big and small to implement growth strategies that have led to quite mind-blowing successes. And some of those use cases that are real deal, you can verify, are helping clients become New York Times bestselling authors, helping them grow their podcast to huge brand deals that have millions of downloads. They're increasing the revenue through their podcasts and through their book deals and all the parts and pieces that come with that recognition. I've also helped clients double their revenue in 6 months, meaning that in a 6-month period, I have helped clients be able to make more in 6 months than they did the entire previous 12 months. That's and there's more than just one instances there as well. I've helped clients host large and small events, acquire new practices through mergers or acquisitions, and I've helped generate millions of dollars in profits for our clients since that 2019 timeframe. Expertise is a blend between my degree in psychology. I spent 5 years in special operations, owning and growing my own medical practice, and working with hundreds of business owners and clinics all over the world, from, all over the United States, Dubai, London, Australia. And all of this matters because having a very clear understanding of how business works, how people think, how to strategize, and knowing what's happening and having a pulse, not just from one area to the next, but around the globe on what's working and what's trending in medicine, is a really important and very helpful tool to our clinic and to our clients. Over the course of this 90-minute or so webinar, we're going to be covering 4 different areas and some of the most important areas that you can focus on to really start making a difference. Now, the webinar is, the 5 strategies, and that 5th strategy will be the 12-week course that I'll talk to you about and what you're able to sign up for. But as far as the 4 specific strategies, we're going to be talking about the difference between your CRM and your EHR. We're going to talk about some profit loss quick fixes and ways for you to kind of seal the gaps and be able to shift some things around and maybe do some pricing arrangement stuff and things that will be quite low hanging fruit for you to make an impact on your profitability. We'll talk about a strategy where if everything is a priority, then nothing is, and how detrimental it can be to chase and follow the good idea fairy. And then the last strategy we'll work through is how to make more while doing less. And that's not just like a catchy title. I'll share with you a story from an actual client who shared that with me. And it's kind of a funny story, but you can absolutely make more money, make more profit by doing less when you have things dialed in. If you have questions along the way, please put those in the comments so that we can answer those and get those responses back to you. And so strategy number 1, the difference between your CRM and EHR. And what I want to share right out the gate is that this is strategy number 1 because of how frequently I have seen clinics trying to use their EHR as a CRM, not realizing that although some EHRs offer the ability to be able to do some CRM related stuff, it's CRM features bolted onto an EHR. It's an EHR system that it was truly built for, but has sometimes some CRM related things. And if you're not familiar with a CRM, it's a client relations management tool. And it's what helps you be able to get all kinds of data and track your leads coming into your system and your funnels and what happens all throughout, and ultimately whether they convert or not, and being able to communicate with them. And so right off the chute, we know that what an EHR is great at doing are the things that are clinic related, the charting, the documentation. You're able to do your labs and your imaging and your medications. You can refill meds in there. You can do your charting, your SOAP notes. It's HIPAA compliant. You can do billing and coding. We use Athena in our clinic. Our sister clinic is a hormones clinic, and that one we use Serbo in. Those are 2 really, really good EHRs, horrible CRM. So we know that when it comes to what you're really looking for from your EHR, what it's likely not doing or doing very well at all is your leads tracking, your sales pipelines, marketing, automated follow-up, which is critically important for not just alleviating a lot of administrative tasks from you and your team, but is critically important because we know that the average is 20 touch points or so where people need to be educated and build that trust before they're going to be willing to do any business with you. So it does all of that with its different features the CRM does, but not your EHR. A system or a CRM system is built for capturing and tracking your leads. It will do calling, as your forms, your text, your ads, all of it can come into the funnel in a variety of different ways. The automated follow-up, I'll show you a screenshot of one of the systems that we have set up that's automated, that it really just, when you calculate how many hours are spent in lead follow-up and how many leads are lost because of your inability to do all the proper follow-up, it's crazy. But being able to automate it and know that it's happening and have these leads going down your pipeline without your actual needing of picking up the phone or texting or responding to emails, all that stuff, it's a big, big number in time savings at the end of each week and certainly every month. You can do, some tasking with it, which is important for accountability. We'll talk about accountability in one of our strategies and how important that is in your overall profitability and success. Conversion tracking, reactivation campaigns of old leads or past patients, and then visibility into where your money is leaking, right? Just like with your patients, you need to understand the root cause of something if you're going to be able to give them a root solution. And so the CRM helps you do that on the business side. Our system, Ignition Systems, and I'll share with you how you can get involved with that if you don't currently have a really robust CRM. Our system is HIPAA compliant. So while you're not doing your clinical documentation or your charting, you can interact with your patients and you can do anything that you need to do that the CRM is built for, and it's all totally HIPAA compliant. Now, the reason why we're, again, starting here is because this is the area that so many clinics start to really fail. And it happens gradually over time. And it's also one of the most frustrating parts, because this is where you know that if you get somebody in your clinic, you get them in your procedure room, you're able to properly diagnose, you're able to present to them different options. And then based on whatever the options are that you agree with, you're able to really care for them. And whatever it is that they're dealing with and whatever their goals are, you're able to help them through it. But you need those people to be in your clinic, and you need to be having those conversations with them. You need to have an opportunity to work with them. And there is no shortage of people out there who are in need of your services. There are no shortages of people who are willing to pay a premium for those services, but you've got to get them in front of you. You've got to get them in your pipeline. And so on the left-hand side there in the picture, this is your sales funnel. And this is where a lot of clinics really struggle, because a lot of money goes out the door each month with paid marketing, with ads, with magazines that go out to certain neighborhoods or door hangers, you name it. I mean, there's 10,000 different ways in which a clinic will spend precious marketing dollars to be able to generate leads. Now, we don't just want any lead, we want high quality leads. And so we need to have a filtering system to know who are the tire kickers and the people that are just coming around to just price shop and aren't really serious about starting right away. And the speed to that lead matters. If somebody's really in a place where they're wanting to take action right now for whatever reason, they stepped on the scale and they hit a certain number, or they just got, they're not feeling well, and they've ChatGPT'd, or they've, gone to WebMD and they're sure they have, stage 3 cancer. Whatever the circumstances are, like something has happened where somebody's been in an emotional state and now they're really reaching out serious about taking the next step. Whoever responds to that lead first is the person that's going to be able to have the conversation and very likely to convert them. If you're waiting even a couple of hours to respond to a lead, which in many cases it's days if they're even responded to at all. But if you're not responding to a lead and having that conversation with in a max 2-hour time frame, the chances are that person has already selected a different clinic and signed up for a different program, and you've missed it. The next piece is that you're not going to get a hold of every person that comes in, and people are going to truly want to check things out. They're going to want to know more. Maybe you do have an initial conversation with them, but they're kind of new into this, whatever, hormones or, this different approach to medicine that you do differently, whatever makes your clinic distinct. And they're going to need to be followed up with. So you're going to set up a follow-up call. And now when I say you, this could be you or your sales team or whoever you have chasing down these leads, and they may or may not answer. It's a higher probability than not that when a future call is set up, they don't show up for it. And it's super frustrating, but that's just the nature of the beast. And so monster follow-up is that they're being reached out by text, by email, by voice messages being sent, by phone calls. And that's happening on a regular basis. Once somebody reaches out to you and they have expressed interest in knowing more about what you do, that's them asking for you to contact them. So there is no reason why you would talk yourself out of reaching out to them. If they truly do not want to hear anything more from you, they will opt out of your text messages and emails, and on the phone, they'll tell you that they don't want to talk anymore. That's when you would then move that lead into the lost category and you would not pursue that one anymore. But until that happens, you're wanting to consistently follow up with that lead. Now, when you have, let's say, dozens or multiple dozens or even hundreds of leads coming in because you have a really good, solid marketing campaign that's going on, how do you possibly have follow-up with each one of those people that are wanting more information and asking for a future call and wanting to talk to their spouse or any of these other opportunities for them to get off the phone because they're not quite ready to make a buying decision. How do you follow up with all of them if you're trying to do that manually? First of all, you could hire a sales team and you could have a team of people that were, on dialers and making those calls for you and staying on top of each lead. But that is incredibly expensive. And that, quite frankly, for most small clinics is not an option. It's different if, for a hospital system, but for most small clinics, that's not even reasonable to have an entire team that's following up with them, even 3 or 4 people, just to make sure that the leads that you're paying for are actually converting or at least having the highest potential for conversion. That's where that monster follow-up comes into place. You also have the need for those that want to move forward, the scheduling component of it. You have that nurture campaign, as I mentioned, 20 points on average people need to be connected with. And that doesn't mean like an actual conversation, but it does mean that you have some omnipresence and that they're learning more about you in multiple ways than just 1 or 2 different avenues. You have objection follow-up that's needed. Some people are going to say it's not a no, but it's not a right now for whatever reason. And they need to be nurtured. They need to be followed up with. In some cases, you can downsell to them and you can offer them a lower program, which I would highly recommend in a lot of cases. And in many circumstances, I'm seeing clinics struggle because they're trying to offer too much too quickly. And instead, what I would recommend is taking the land, then expand approach. The whole way that you're going to be able to really increase your revenue and profitability from a sales standpoint is we all want the big fish. We all want the people that are out there that are they have plenty of extra income to be able to throw out their health and really make their health in an investment, and they're happy to part ways with that money. But the reality is that for people who don't have the money, it takes a terminal illness or it takes a real scary circumstance before they're willing to just figure out a way to be able to pay for some sort of expensive proactive procedure or care. So you have that population, but they're willing to move heaven and earth to be able to avoid either the health scare or the health condition that they have. And those are the people that understand, like, without health, they have nothing. The other population are the people who have extra income, and it's a non-issue for them to be able to part ways with their money in order to get care. But then you have everybody else in between, which is the majority of the people out there and the people that you're marketing to. So the in-between people, they're going to need to take that land then expand approach. So you're offering something that is a much lower package, something that is much easier for them to say yes to. You're managing expectations appropriately so that they are not feeling like there's any kind of overpromising and under-delivering. What you want them to feel is like they would pay double for whatever that you gave, that all the promises that you made to them, you followed through with, and that whatever their expectations were, you exceeded them. When you do that, when you come to them for the next offer and you say you paid, $997 for this offer, they feel like they would have paid $2,000 for it easily. They're very happy with what they were given. And then you present to them a $2,500 offer. So now you've 2.5 times the first offer. What's the probability they're going to say, let's do it? It's a very high probability. And that's the way that you continue to expand the opportunity, expand the lifetime value, and expand your clinic and your team's ability to truly help them. So you want to first offer something that is very easy for them to say yes to, that they can be assured that they're going to get their money's worth, that you're going to keep whatever promises that you've made. And then the next time you offer $2,500 package, that goes really well, exceeds their expectations. They would have paid a bit more for it. And then you offer them the $5,000 package, and then eventually the $7,500 and the $10,000 and then $20,000 package. And each time along the way, they're willing to move forward with it based on that trust that you've built and the track record that they have with you and your team. And so that's that land and expand approach until you get to your conversion process. On the right-hand side, what you're seeing is an actual workflow on the legacy primary care side, the clinic, that I co-own. And this is just one workflow where what you can see is the trigger that a form was submitted. So we have on the very top of the funnel, we have some paid traffic going to Facebook and Instagram, and there's a form that they fill out. Now, immediately when that form is filled out, based on this trigger, you can see that there's a series of other steps that start to happen. And each one of those purple boxes on the top row, what those indicate is a different action that the person may take. So it's an if then. If they do this, then this is the sequence they get. If they do that, this is the sequence they get. And as you can see, there's 6 different what if scenarios that all have multiple steps to them. And you can look at any one of them and it creates a tag, which then will enter them into a nurturing campaign. It creates an opportunity in the sales pipeline. It will then email them some additional information that increases the credibility and awareness around the clinic. And then it will assign it to a user, which is a person inside the team that is in charge of taking that next step with them because they haven't signed up yet. All they've done is filled out a form. So we need somebody to own that piece, and you can see that that's involved with any what if scenario, although the person assigned may be different depending on what action they take. And it will set up all kinds of other sequences. Now you can see at the very bottom is a wait. So that is depending on what happens during a certain time frame from a couple of minutes or a couple of hours or a couple of days, whatever the wait time is, will then trigger the next thing that we want that sequence to look like. And so that when that happens, it then opens up in a even bigger workflow like with what you're seeing, but it's more specific and more dialed in. So the emails, the text messages, the automated voice messages that go out is all tailored based on what they're choosing and what they're not choosing. This in itself, guys, will be a massive, massive help to your clinic. If you don't have something that's doing this, I'm telling you right now, you are missing out on a critical component of capturing the what's called a ROAS, the return on your ad spend, and you've got many leaks in your sales pipeline and your follow-up process if you don't have something that does this. And I'll tell you right now that no EHR does. No system on the clinical side is designed to do this. This is where a CRM is absolutely necessary. And it is also why we created our own HIPAA compliant system, and it's called Ignition Systems. We use it in our clinics, our clients use it. And this is one of our secret weapons. When a client of ours signs up and we bring the clinic on board, we have an entire medical clinic workflows and sequences and triggers, everything that is really necessary for the success of the people that you're marketing to and the types of products and services you're marketing to actually have a much higher level of conversion. So I'll share with you how you get involved with Ignition Systems if right now you're missing a CRM or the CRM you have is lackluster. All right. So transitioning from the outside, leads coming in and what you should have on the inside by way of a CRM, the next strategy is really what's happening internally. And so I have it broken up into 3 categories. It's the captain, it's the coxswain, and it's the rower. Now, I use these terms because I love the ocean and because of how applicable it is to business. So here's the captain of the ship. They're the ones that are the leader, right? They are standing on the highest level of the platform with their binoculars and they're looking around, and what they're looking for is any, signs of trouble, anything that needs to be avoided. And they're doing that to protect their crew, whoever they have on the ship with them, the ship itself. And the ship is the business, right? The ship that everybody's on is the business. And the captain is responsible for making sure that that ship gets from point A to point B safely and successfully on time. And ultimately that the mission is accomplished. From a business standpoint, that you're the leader. The CEO is the leader. The clinic manager is a leader. The person at the end of the day that's responsible for making the decisions and determining what the vision is and determining what the core values are and the mission of your business and of your clinic, that falls squarely on the shoulders of the captain. And that's on the business side. So a captain has to be good at business. You may have opened up your clinic because of really being dialed in as a practitioner. We see that an awful lot, especially after this whole COVID thing where hospital staff went from being these absolute heroes and being praised all across the board for the work that they were doing to all of a sudden the villains. And so we saw a mass exodus of people that worked in the big hospital systems and start opening up their own clinics. Some of them left medicine altogether, but in most cases, they opened up their own clinic. And we also see a lot of clinics open up by people who are just disenchanted with the big healthcare system. They're tired of only seeing patients in a reactionary place and having patients come into the ER when really they should have gone to their primary care, or, people that could have been helped, and certain, ailments and conditions could have been avoided had they taken a more proactive approach. And it gets very tiring for a lot of clinicians to always be on that receiving end, that reactionary end. And so they'll open up their own business. And the point is that none of that actually prepares you to start your own business. You just are finding yourself at a place where you're ready to start your own business, to take an off ramp from whatever things that you're disenchanted with and that you want to separate from, and open up a new chapter within your clinical world, right? So a good captain is good at business. That's why you're here, and I applaud you for it. You also have to be the visionary. You have to be looking ahead 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 10 years down the road and say, where am I driving this business towards? Where's the ship pointed? And is it going the right direction? And when we arrive at certain waypoints along the way, are those the right waypoints, or are they going to be something that's going to hold us back? You want to be able to get as far along as possible in the shortest amount of time possible, not just from a revenue standpoint, but because your patients are lives. And for every life that you change with your patients, there's this domino effect with your patients' loved ones and their friends and family that all want to see them on this earth happy and healthy for as long as humanly possible. And your vision in doing that matters. You're expanding the opportunity and being able to help more patients achieve better health. And that domino effect continues on. You're also responsible for being the example within your clinic. What I mean by that is, as the leader, as a CEO, as the captain, you're responsible for making good decisions. You're responsible for setting the standards and to say, this is what's acceptable within the clinic and on the team, and here's what's not acceptable. And no matter where you set those parameters up, you've always got to be this shining star example, and somebody that your team, your clients, your patients, your preferred partners and the people that you're doing business with. Like, for example, in our clinic, we have a full-time phlebotomist that Quest Diagnostic brings forward to us. So we have a full-time phlebotomist that we don't have to pay for because Quest Diagnostics does. And so she's technically not an employee, not even technically, she is not an employee of our practice, but that's where she's full-time assigned to. So myself and my business partner, we have to be the example of what's acceptable, not just to our team, but to our business partners as well. And in the case of Quest, we say, these are our standards. These are the rules that we operate under. This is how we treat our patients. And she's held to that same standard. But as you can imagine, and probably have some life experience around, if you've ever had somebody that you've reported to that was a do as I say, not as I do, and you see that person as a hypocrite, nobody is going to work for a hypocrite. Nobody's going to respect a hypocrite. And people don't like being surrounded by others, especially decision makers who are you do it this way because I said to, don't worry about what I do. They are worried about it, and that makes a difference. There's been lots of studies shown that say that when a patient leaves when a team member, an employee leaves a business and they're resigning from that business, first of all, that's them firing the business. But it's very likely the fact that it's the leadership that's getting fired before any other things. And there's been studies that have shown that employees don't leave a business due to like pay or benefits first. It's the management and the leadership team. As a captain of a ship, as a CEO, as a business owner, you also have to be massively resilient. As you know, if you've been in business for any period of time at all, business is super tough. And, for every win that you get, it can feel, or maybe certainly be the case, that it took 10 losses. And it is a stressful thing. It is a demanding role that you're in. You have to manage people and personalities, and you have to be able to adapt and overcome and be very quick on your feet and think, how am I going this person called in sick today. I've got, I'm down a provider. We've got a full calendar today. And, you've got to figure that stuff out. You don't have the luxury of just closing off and going internal and taking the, if I don't look at the monster in the room, the monster doesn't exist approach. You're not allowed to. You're the owner, you're the visionary, you're the example. You've got to be resilient. And then the last piece, well, not last, but as far as like main headings go for a good captain, is to be clear. You need to be very clear yourself on what your vision is, what your mission is, what your core values are. You need to be very clear on, at the end of the year, what does a good year look like? What does a great year look like? What is acceptable versus what's not acceptable? You have to be very clear that at the end of the year, this is the things that will have gotten done. And this is why it's important that they get done. If you don't know that for yourself and you're not clear yourself on that, how is it that you're going to be able to clearly explain that to your team and be able to give specifics to the degree where they're going to be able to help you achieve what it is that is necessary in order to hit, monthly goals, quarterly goals, and eventually the annual goals? You have to be very clear on those things yourself. You have to be the example around those things. You have to be resilient. You have to be all the things. Now, that's the captain of the ship, but you can only do so much, right? There was a book that I read in 2013 timeframe, because it was right after I opened my first business, that someone recommended. It was called The E-Myth. And it talks about how in every business, there's the entrepreneur, there's the manager, and then there's the technician. And one of the fatal mistakes too many business owners make, and you see this all the time in clinics, and maybe, excuse me, some of you there now, I gotta get a drink of water, sorry. Okay. Some of those mistakes that you might be making is that you're all three, and that you're wearing all three hats. You're trying to be the manager, you're trying to be the owner, and you're trying to be the clinician, technician all at once. And that simply is not a recipe for success. You can only be so scrappy for so long and be able to sustain that. And you're certainly not going to expect to be able to grow, because there's too many things that need to happen, and you're only one or two people being able to do it. So that is the book I highly recommend, The E-Myth, because as the captain, you're the CEO, you're the entrepreneur, and then you have the coxswain. Now, the coxswain is the manager, and this is the person that coxswain, first of all, is the person in those rowboats. If you've seen the Men in the Boat, that movie, great movie, or if you've been on a rowing team yourself, the coxswain is the person that sits at the very front of the boat looking backwards. And what they're doing is they're observing the team, they're giving feedback to the team, they are motivating the team, and their sole job is to take care of the team and make sure the team is doing their job. They're moving towards the back, right? So the finish line is at the coxswain's back, but yet it's one of the most important roles on the boat, because of what happens if the team starts getting out of sync, or some people are underperforming. And that is the job of the clinic manager. That's the job of the person that you have assigned to your team that is really responsible for the daily operations and ensuring that whatever needs to be happening at a very high level every single day for the team, the clinic, the patients overall, that is your clinic manager. And they need to be a problem solver, because they're on the front lines of the phones ringing, the portal messages coming through, the patients checking in. We had last week, our reception gal call in, and therefore, our clinic manager needed to step into that role temporarily until the MA, she got a call that said that she had to pick up her daughter because they had head lice in the classroom. And so all of a sudden, our clinic manager found herself down a receptionist and an MA, and we had a full clinic, multiple providers seeing patients, and she had to step into one of the MA roles to start doing the rooming process. And so she let me know, and I sat down and I did the reception work. I checked in the patients, and I had fun with that because it's not a role that I typically am in, and so I got to engage with the patients in a different way, which I thought was kind of fun for a day. But the clinic manager, she had to be in full problem solving mode. She had to figure out how to make this initial transition and then how to transition and problem solve through the first scenario getting even more challenging by way of having another member of her team having to leave to go pick up her daughter and take her home because the class had head lice. Now, thankfully, her daughter didn't have it, but there was over like 6 kids that had it in her classroom. And so she has to be a problem solver. As I mentioned, she's got to be the coxswain, which is that person that is really taking care of the team. It's so important to have a pulse on what's going on with the team and knowing people individually and being able to manage different personalities and really have a very high functioning team in sometimes a very stressful environment. And that motivator and that cheerleader and that accountability person, that's the coxswain. So they have to be really good at that stuff too. They also have to be the buffer. And what I mean by that is the manager role is a very challenging role. You do not want somebody who's never managed people before because of the challenges that are unique to management. And the buffer is that the manager has 1 foot in on the team side, 1 foot in on the management side, the leadership side. So when my business and partner and I, we have something that we want to roll out or we have made a decision on something, we'll call in our clinic manager, we'll have the conversation with her, and then it's her job to then roll it out to the team. Not everything that's rolled out are things that the team is necessarily going to like, but it's necessary for either adapting with the times or being innovative, or sometimes we need to take some corrective action on something. And so the clinic manager in the office, she's understanding what needs to be done and why. Now it's her job to then go and roll it out and then ensure people are adhering to whatever that new process is or standard or whatever we're doing. And she has to deal with the feedback that she gets from the team. And so it's a very challenging spot because the manager's like, well, the owners want this. I hear you guys, but this is the decision that's being made. And they have to do it in a way that isn't like degrading to the leadership team, or, it's not something that could fester into a problem amongst the team, and looking at the bright side, the glass half full, the silver lining in it. And that is the buffer. You also want your clinic manager to have the ability and the time to be able to teach, because the way in which leadership is really gauged to say, do we have an effective leader? Do we have an effective manager? Is the internal development of the team, and the ability for a clinic to get even more robust in its offerings and its capabilities without having to have the swelling of operating expenses by having to hire another person, right? And so in a lot of cases, having Swiss Army knives within your clinic and having people that are capable of doing multiple different things, like in the scenario I gave you, I knew how to do the whole check-in process, the reception process, and all the calendaring and all that stuff, and which was massively helpful because our clinic manager is an MA as well. And so she was able to go assume the MA role. So, at some point it was her that showed me how to be, how to step into the reception role. And so this teaching piece is so important in order to be able to have one team, one fight, and be able to get everybody capable of doing multiple different things so that the problem solving is much less challenging. And you have people that can ebb and flow with the different things that happen throughout the day or the week. And then the cleaner part, this actually comes from Tim Grover. Now, Tim Grover, he's known as the kind of the behind the scenes coach for Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and many, many other high performing people. Even today, he's a consultant for many Fortune 500, CEOs and leadership teams. And he's written a couple of books, New York Times bestselling books, where he talks about in one of them that a cleaner is somebody who can be trusted in having something be tasked to them and that thing getting done. No lip service, no almost done's or I tried's or anything other than done, because at the end of the day, we get paid for done. And a cleaner is somebody who can be trusted to be able to be delegated something and to ensure that it gets done and it gets done the right way. we had the good fortune of having Tim Grover as one of my keynote speakers at an event that I held a couple of years ago. And it's incredible how the mindset is so powerful when it comes to achieving really, really high levels of success. And that, if you can get your team, if you can get your clinic to be a clinic of personal and professional development, and you can get everybody on the team to be a cleaner, and you get everybody on the team to be somebody that you can trust to move forward with action, unafraid to take messy action, but ultimately gets the thing done, and it's done in a way that at minimum meets, if not exceeds, expectations. If you get everybody on the team to do that, and you get everybody on the team to be a cleaner, you have an unstoppable team, you have an unstoppable clinic, and are going to have huge, huge impact amongst the population of people that you serve and the families that love them. So then the final role is the rower. Now these are all the technicians. These are all the frontline workers within your clinic. And keep in mind that this isn't just like within the four walls of your clinic. This is anybody and everybody that you have involved with your team. We have third-party billers. Even though we use Athena and Athena offers billing as a service, we've opted to hire a local medical billing company to do our billing for us. And we outsource our marketing. We outsource our graphic design. We outsource a lot of different things the same way that almost all small businesses do, because small businesses just don't have the capital and resources to have a big building with everybody in one place and one big happy family. It's just not possible for small businesses to do. So the rowers, again, going back to the boat thing, the boat, each individual rower is responsible for a really, really important piece of the winning equation. They all have to be great at their job, every single one of them. And you really have two different buckets that people on the team get put into. Either they're an asset or they're a liability. And it's pretty easy to define both of those, right? If somebody at the end of the day costs you more than it costs you more to be on the team, either in money, reputation, brand, anything, if it costs more for them to be there than they provide to you, to the clinic, to the team, to the business, then they are a liability. If they, on the other hand, create more opportunity, they bring in more revenue or more opportunity, then you're paying them to do that, then they're an asset. So we need everybody to just be great at the job. Like, that's the standard. Be really great at your job. And whatever the responsibilities and the roles are for them, that they just excel at that. The next piece is to be reliable. That's pretty self-explanatory. If they say they're going to do something, that they keep that commitment, that they do the thing they say they're going to do. If they are scheduled for a shift, they're not calling in sleepy or calling in hungover or anything. We can rely on them to be where they are to be, supposed to be or scheduled to be, that whatever is tasked and delegated to them, that they get done. And we just need them to be reliable. That's a full stop. If somebody's not reliable on your team, they're a liability, and they need to get out of the equation. They need to get off the team. Loyalty. We know that in the medical world, there is a shortage of really good medical professionals. Like, there's, we have a shortage of doctors. We have a shortage of MAs. We have a shortage of nurse practitioners. Like, there's just a shortage of people out there, and there is no shortage of need. You have clinics out there, hospitals out there that are headhunting all the time. And, anybody that's on your team, they need to be truly loyal to the clinic, to the mission that you have. Like, what is the mission of your clinic? And how is it that you're looking to have positive change and influence within, the patients' lives, the community, and everything that your clinic's about? They need to be loyal to your core values. They need to be loyal to the direction that the boat is heading, and be truly on board and aligned with all of those things. The rower and the clinician, every person on the team must be a team player. We need to show up for each other. We need to step into the fold and help each other out. We need to be able to not be thin-skinned and cause drama, right? We need everybody to be on a team player and recognize that as long as everybody's really trying to do their best, that everybody recognizes that. And that goes back to, the reason for need for the teacher and the clarity and those pieces, because if somebody's truly trying to do their best and working as hard as they can, that needs to be acknowledged by everybody, and that will inherently help with the reduction of the drama that can oftentimes happen. And then lastly is just be a net positive. If you have everybody on your team doing all these things, tell me how you don't have a winning team. Tell me how you could be at risk from a business standpoint when you have all of these things in place. You really can't. The real issue here is none of the rowers, none of the clinicians, the technicians in your clinic are responsible for the business growth. They help with that by being great at their job, by being reliable, loyal, a team player, but they're not making business decisions. They're not looking at the P&L. They're not making the decisions on, do we hire this agency or that agency? Do we go this direction or that direction? They're given the work to do, and they are supposed to do the work really well and be a net positive along the way. So those are the three different roles in it. And what I would challenge you to do is to really evaluate if you have the right people in the right seats and that all the boxes are being checked and that everybody is an asset. If anybody is a liability, then that gets specifically dealt with in a very quick manner. And that's where we'll get into these different ways of monitoring it based on data. And so we're going to be looking at your OKRs, your KPIs, and then how to properly and effectively do accountability because of how many people do accountability wrong. Now, an OKR is an objective and it's a key result. This essentially is the big picture thing that you want to achieve. And the way that I will demonstrate what this is in a real use case scenario is by sharing with you my work with Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. Now, on the right-hand side, Dr. Lyon is sitting with her now New York Times bestselling book, Forever Strong. And on the left is the big event that happened within 2 weeks of her becoming a New York Times bestselling author. So what happened was Dr. Lyon reached out to me and said, I've got two big goals. Essentially, I've got two big OKRs. I've got my objective for the book is to publish this book and become a New York Times bestselling author. The key result was the achievement of bestselling author, not like number one on Amazon's bestselling or, New York Times bestselling author was the key result for the objective of publishing a book. The second OKR was that simultaneously of her doing this book launch, she wanted to follow that book launch and the goal of the New York Times bestselling author with a large event down in the Houston, Texas area. So she approached me and said, I need help with this because these are my goals. These are the key results. And I need to be able to step away and really focus on this book launch. I need to be able to go on these podcast tours and these speaking tours and really be out in front of the masses talking about her book because that's what it takes to really hit the New York Times bestselling list is you have to sell a certain number, which is a large number of books within a very short period of time. So she said, I need to do that and I need to be able to do it in a way where I'm not actively involved at the same level that I am now in the clinic and with the team. And she asked me to become her fractional chief of operations guy for her and to come in and step in and really take over a lot of the responsibilities that she was responsible for, but really couldn't maintain while she went and focused on these other things. So how two OKRs became multiple OKRs and objectives and key results is when we had our initial discussion, I said, okay, Gab, if you want to be able to do this and you don't want to lose money and you need to be able to separate yourself, we need to reduce the number of concierge patients that you have that you're individually working with. And we need to basically cut it down by 2/3. But in order for us to do that and not lose money, the pricing needs to go up. So her goal was to only see 20 patients total, have 20 concierge patients total. And at the time, she was charging $65,000. So the OKR that developed within the OKR of the book tour and the event and her need to be really offline, much more focusing on it, was a price change. Now, before we could change the pricing of what concierge patients were being charged, we had to do several other things. First of all, we had to take a look at what her packages included from the ground up, from entry level all the way up to the top tier. And we needed to completely restructure a bunch of things with it. And as a result of that, we needed to bring in another doc, a high level doc, but not somebody that's as high level as Dr. Lyon. And so Dr. Lyon, she was charging $65,000 at the time for her concierge. We hired this other doc that was what we would charge patients that would see her the $65,000. And then I told Dr. Lyon, we're going to increase your concierge to $100,000. She at first didn't believe that anybody would really pay that. She said, Matt, people are already paying $65,000 to work with me independently. They may be willing to pay $75,000. I do not think anybody's going to be willing to pay $100,000. I said, Doc, we've built the framework. We've revamped the packaging. This will make sense. You just have to trust me. So she had to trust that the key result I was saying I could bring forward through all of these other parts and pieces would actually come forward. So she said, okay, let's do it. So she greenlit it. We rolled it all out. We hired the new doc. We started having the patients that Dr. Lyon was not going to be working with anymore going to Dr. Lisa, and they paid the same amount of money. We had everything in place on how that was going to happen and not be disruptive. And then we had the $100,000 assigned for Dr. Lyon. And so 20 patients, $2 million in revenue annually for just 20 concierge patients at $100,000. And the first one came through. Dr. Lyon passed them to me. She said, okay, we have the first person that wants to work with me as a concierge patient. I'll have you talk to them. I talked to them, and they wired the $100,000 that very next day. And then one after the other, she got all 20 of them. So while that's all happening, the book launches. She comes a New York Times bestselling author, and then the picture on the left was me speaking at her event, and there was I think 400 or so people at the very first event. And if any of you have put on events before, you know that getting 400 people into a room when you've never done an event before, that is exceptional. Most people will do an event where it's 100 people or less for their very first one. And there's a lot of logistics that go into it. There's a lot of different things that have to happen. And that's where that teamwork comes into play. That's where the coxswain comes into play. And that's where all of the rowers being great at their job and being Swiss Army knives and being able to take different parts and pieces of this thing, it all came together, and her event was massively successful. She had her New York Times bestselling book, and our key results were all met. So I share that with you because that's an example of what OKRs can look like. And really they need to be big. They need to be substantial. An OKR is not an OKR if it is not a substantial goal. And that's where I'll share with you another example in working with Cynthia Thurlow. And by the way, if you're not following these ladies, these docs that I'm mentioning, you really, really should, because their content is incredible. They're great examples of multiple different things. If you're wanting to start a podcast, or you have a podcast and want to make it massively successful, or do a book deal, or speak more, like these ladies, they have laid the groundwork for you to be able to follow their success clues that they've left behind, and you'll find yourself getting much further, much faster. In this case with Cynthia Thurlow, as it relates to the OKRs, this was a meeting that we had in Miami. So she flew me and her leadership team to Miami. We spent a couple of days locked into a beautiful Airbnb, and the whole focus was planning the next year ahead. And when I asked Cynthia what her big goal was, she said she wanted to grow her podcast. But the first initial goal that she gave around the podcast and the number of downloads and the amount of money being generated from brand deals and from sponsors, I asked her if that felt scary to her, if that number made her palms get sweaty and really made her stressed in any way. And she sat for a second. She said, not really. And I said, then these are not the right OKRs. We need the OKRs to stress you out. They need to make you uncomfortable. And that's when you know you've developed the right OKR. And it's funny because Cynthia, she is so poised and she's very, very intelligent. And she said, okay, I'm willing to get uncomfortable. And again, it comes down to the trust. And I'm sharing this with you because I'm going to explain what our 12-week program looks like here in just a bit. But the knowledge is not power. It's what you do with the knowledge that becomes powerful. And we all have blind spots, and no matter how good you are at the clinical side, and even maybe good at the business side, we all have blind spots, and shining lights on blind spots, being challenged, being told that's not quite the right goal. We need to amplify that goal. You're capable of it. That's what I shared with Cynthia. And she said, okay, I'll trust the process. Let's do this. So we set these really big, audacious goals, and we left with her feeling uncomfortable. But here's the crazy part about it. 2 weeks, 3 weeks after this meeting in Miami, Cynthia calls me and she tells me that the first major milestone that we had for the quarter, she had already hit. Between the structure, between the blueprint, and the belief system that I had in her team had in her, and so by osmosis, she had in herself. Within just a few weeks, she crossed the threshold for her quarterly goal. And I said, Cynthia, two things. Thing number one is that you are going to blow the big, hairy goals out of the water if you keep up this momentum. And thing number two is we didn't even set the right goals for you because you've demonstrated that we need to go even further. And so we bumped up the goals even further. But at that point, she was game for it. Like, she had this entirely new belief system. And the same goes with your clients and your patients. Once you open up their eyes to what's possible by working with you, they will spend much more. They will cooperate much more. They will adhere and comply to the plans much more. You have to get their belief system in there. And Cynthia's belief system was there. And once you know it, by the end of the year, she had blown past the original goals, and she had hit the even more advanced goals that we had set, had an absolutely record-breaking year. And the picture to the right of her and I, she actually spoke at one of my events. We hold the Ignite Your Life Experience event, and it's a 2-day event. She came and spoke at it. Her and her husband attended the whole thing, and it was awesome having her there. Quite the endorsement as well that you can see on the bottom from her. The KPIs, these are different from the OKRs because they are what happens as you start to break an OKR down. So as you start breaking down the objectives and key results into different projects that then need to be tracked and have accountability around, those turn into KPIs, your key performance indicators. What I have on the left-hand side is a snapshot of some of the things that are really important when it comes to KPIs. So there's 3 things that are getting monitored at all times. The first is the projects that's happening on the scorecard, your tasks, and then the scorecard itself. And you can see that what's different with the timeline. So from a scorecard standpoint, what you're doing is you're reverse engineering your quarterly projects and goals, and the things that when those are done, that's going to lead to a successful quarter, and then after the 4 quarters, a successful year. And so in a way of not getting caught off guard on things that are not working, and a way to amplify the things that are working, is you have all of the measurables, all of the things you want to measure, both financially and non-financially, on a single spreadsheet. And you have next to that measurable what the metric is, actually what the goal is for each one of those things. So it would be, the number of leads that you want per week, the number of conversions you want, the target for ad spend and your ROAS, the number of referrals that come from internally, the number of 5-star Google reviews. Like, all of these things are on a spreadsheet that every week during a team meeting is gone over. And each one of these things is assigned to a specific person. So that way, when you're going over the scorecard, you're saying, did we meet or not meet the metric for this week? And if the answer is no, we didn't meet it, then you have one specific person that you're able to have a conversation with and say, why not? What do we need to do different? And maybe there's some problem on the horizon, or maybe there's something that's going on there, but maybe not. Maybe it was just a fluke. And that's the beauty of having a scorecard, is that when you look at a trending report, so you look at the last 3 weeks, if you see it going one direction or the other, that's either cause for concern or celebration. So if you see, this is the 3rd week in a row that these numbers have gone up and not didn't even, not only did we meet the metric, but we've exceeded it now for 3 weeks in a row. Now you want to figure out what's going on so that way you can do much more of that, right? And then eventually get to a point where you're increasing your metric because you're consistently hitting certain numbers. On the adverse side is if you're seeing week after week the numbers are going down and it's not being met, now there's something that's going on that really needs to be looked into. This is one of the key areas that most businesses are not doing, and one of the top reasons why they get caught off guard, and before they realize it, they're having some concerns about payroll. They're having concerns about, attrition, or concerns about, are we paying the right ad agency? Are we paying the right graphics people or whatever? But this weekly trending allows for you to get ahead of things before they become a real problem. Most clinics are just looking at their kind of high level numbers on an informal kind of way, and don't really have anything diagnosed and don't really know. And so they're playing catch up and they're being reactionary. And from a leadership standpoint, there's nothing that will bite you more than being a reactionary leader, reactionary owner. This helps you be proactive, and stay ahead of things. The tasks that you're seeing those 7 days, those are when certain things get delegated in a 7 to 14 day time frame, meaning it's going to take 14 days or less to be able to get something done. From an accountability standpoint, is this done or is this not done? And from a quarterly project standpoint, is this on track or off track? And these conversations are being had every single week. We're going to get into this in much more detail in the 12-week program. There is not nearly enough time to really dissect this the way that it needs to be, but just evaluate what you're currently doing and ask yourself, honestly, do you have this level of tracking? Even though this is just a small piece of the overall tracking and accountability, do you have this? Because if not, you are missing a major component to your success of your clinic. And I can assure you that whatever's going well could be going much, much better for you. And the things that are not going very good and very well could be shifted and turned completely around to where it's an asset, not a liability to you. The picture on the right, that's a nurse practitioner. Her name is Lindsay Kinghorn, and she was a client. I have her on here because of how significant this was to her and to her clinic. Now, I mentioned right at the top that I've had multiple clients have some massive successes, and she's one of them. She's actually one of my clients that beat her entire previous 12 months of revenue in the first 6 months of us working together. And in part, that was due to the kind of structure that's on here that we put in place. It's completely possible, guys, that you can have an absolutely incredible business and clinic and something that pays you well and is totally worth your time, something that fires you up every day and that you have this passion for, and that you're able to really enjoy what you do and make the kind of money that you really deserve for taking on the risk and putting so much into starting your own clinic. But you have to have these things dialed in. You can bet that when Lindsay is making as much in the first 6 months as she did the entire previous year, that really starts to open up additional doors for growth and for personal compensation and all of the other things that happen when you have a successful clinic. The accountability piece is, this is also one of those things that needs to really be gone into in much more depth. And in the 12-week program, we have an entire workbook. It's like 126 pages or something. And it's got all kinds of exercises through it. And accountability is one of those things that I see happening too frequently, being done incorrectly. And it's such a problem for clinics and the owners because of how much is going awry, I think. It's not going the right direction because accountability is not happening the right way. So here's like a bullet point list that I'll briefly touch on. But again, this demands much more attention and time. And we do weekly live calls during our 12-week course. And that's where we do Q&A and we actually interact and go through these points in more detail along with the workbook. But you have to be clear on what the objective is, right? We've kind of talked about that before, but you have to be crystal clear. Like, what is it that you want to do? And what's like a non-negotiable that's getting done? You have to know that yourself, because you then have to explain that to your team and help them understand what is happening and why it's happening. They have to be very clear about it. Again, if you're not clear, there's no way for them to be clear. And if that's the case, there's no way the thing's going to get done, or it's going to get done well. Each thing has to have a project manager, because you have to have one set of eyes to look into and to say, are we on track? Are we off track? Are you high-fiving them because of how well it's going? Or are you having an accountability conversation because things aren't getting done? This is an area that too often there's a lack of understanding of who owns this thing, who was this thing delegated to. So you have people like pointing fingers at each other saying, I don't know, I thought this person was doing it. And the other person saying, I thought that person was doing it. So in order to have proper accountability, you have to have a single person in charge, and they can delegate those tasks, but they want to be delegating those tasks based on the person's zones of genius. And so very quickly with zones of genius is you have 4 quadrants or 4 different areas of it. The first area is things that somebody is good at doing, but they don't like to do. And this is a real problem area, because you have a lot of managers and leaders that will delegate things, and they'll just constantly delegate things to somebody without realizing that they're delegating it to them because they're good at it. But at the same time, they're sucking the life force out of that person because of how much they dislike doing it and how much they dislike it more and more as time goes on. And before you know it, you have somebody that was once a high performer and all of a sudden they got a bad attitude, and not even clear that this is the leader's fault. This is the manager's fault. This is the person that was delegating to somebody who they didn't even take the time to know, are you good at this? And do you actually like this? That's the first category. The second category is they're not good at it, but they do like doing it. And this obviously will haunt you and come back to bite you, because you'll have things that will need delegated, and you'll say, hey, I need this done or that done. You'll have people will raise their hand and say, I'll do it. Let me do it. I'm good at that. And they think they're good at it. But if you've ever watched an episode of The Voice, when somebody comes out on stage and they just sing their absolute heart out, and they're giving all they've got, and then the judges give the feedback, especially Simon Cowell, who say, whatever you do, do not sing. Like, you pursue anything other but singing. And the person on stage is like heartbroken because they've been told all their life that they're, by their mom or dad or whoever, that they're really good at it, but in reality, they're not good at it. And so what they produce isn't good work. So be careful of the people that will raise their hand and say, I'll do that, I'll take it. You delegate it just to get it off your plate, only to be delegating to somebody who's not good at it. So they're not going to produce quality results. And ultimately that's going to cause more work, because now you're going to have to either do it yourself or have somebody else do it that you're paying or whatever. Now all this time and money was lost. The top 2 categories, or the next 2 categories, are really the ones that you're after. That is things that people are good at doing and they like doing. Obviously, this is something where now you're getting great results, and they're not getting burnt out in the process. And so you want to be delegating as much as possible to people on the team that are tasks that fit into this category. They're good at doing it and they like doing it. The 4th category are things that they love doing and they're great at. Now, this is kind of that unicorn category, but there are some things within the scope of the business and the core focus of the business to where it's what people on your team are both great at doing and they absolutely love doing as well. And certainly you're going to get the absolute best results. They're going to have the best attitude while doing it. And so you want to delegate as many things to those people as possible. All that being said, you have to delegate based on somebody's zone of genius. You have to know what their zone of genius is, and you have to be careful about what's being delegated when it's outside of somebody's zone of genius. If you're going to delegate things to somebody who's good at it, but they don't like it, that needs to be in short duration. They need to be aware that this isn't something they particularly enjoy. You very much appreciate them taking this on, and that you do not expect them to have to do this for much longer. That will put wind in their sails and help eliminate that burnout, them thinking that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. The next thing you have to do is demonstrate what done looks like, so that what's in your mind's eye is in their mind's eye. And that way there's no discrepancy between what you are envisioning or wanting to get done and what they think you want. Therefore, when they produce whatever the thing is and they get the delegated task or projects across the finish line, it's exactly the way that you wanted it to be. So you have to demonstrate what that looks like. You also have to set a due date. It can't be ambiguous. You can't just say, "I need this done," or "We need to get this thing across the finish line." It's by when. What is the due date? That way, there's a yardstick to say, this is what's to be done. This is what done looks like. You've demonstrated it. And then here is the due date that it's to be done by. Now, when you've gotten to this point, you are well positioned to start the accountability process, but there's a couple more pieces to the equation. And that is that you need to provide everything to your team that is necessary in order for them to get it done right and for them to be able to do it on time. And then you just have to get out of their way so they can do the thing that you've hired them to do and delegated them to do. Those things, when those things are all in place, you can check every one of those boxes. Now you are able to hold somebody accountable, and they have nowhere to run. They have nobody to point the finger at. They are they're on the hook for it. They know it, you know it, and you will never get accused of favoritism or playing favorites. Like you'll never get accused of that, because if you do this consistently with everybody, no, employment attorney or lawyer is going to be able to accuse you of doing, one thing for one person, but something different for the other person. And that's why their client was held accountable, but this other person wasn't. It saves you in many different ways. All right, next up, this is strategy 3 of 4, your core focus within your clinic. Now, this is something that it's crazy how frequently the good idea fairy derails people from success. And this is why having somebody that can act as like that person that shines a spotlight on your blind spots is so important, because when you're inundated with things every single day in the clinic and you have nonstop people approaching you about this thing or the other thing, or they want, this product or service. Like, no doubt, if you have a brick and mortar business, you have people coming in nonstop pitching you on different softwares and services. And we had this one person come in one time, and remember, I'm not on the clinical side, but it was like it clips on your ears and it would like vibrate or something. And you would turn up this knob on it's a little handheld deal. And it was kind of like, it was definitely sending like an electrical current. You probably know exactly what I'm saying, and I look like a fool the way I'm explaining it. But I put it on. They gave us demo unit. I put it on, sat through for a meeting with it. Some of the others on the team did the same thing. And the goal of this company was for us to incorporate those into our care plan and essentially start selling these things. We're a family medicine practice. We focus on, that side of the medical world. And that thing in particular just didn't fit what we do. It really wasn't something that our providers felt like if they were incorporated into the care plan for our patients, that would make a meaningful difference into it. So here we had somebody that came in and pitched this thing. We said, we might do this. Let us try it out. Let us look at the studies and the research on them. And so this is something we might do. This was the good idea fairy floating in. And we're a for-profit practice. You are as well. And so you're looking for opportunities that make sense. You're not, the difference between the good idea fairy being an actually good idea versus a distraction. And in this case, it was a distraction. It wasn't fitting our model. So we kicked it out. We kicked it out of the center of the box. It started out on the outer rim where it's what we might do. We found that it didn't fit what we do, our core focus. So we bumped it out. And then in the center there is what it is that you do actually do. So an example of how this gets pulled in is the image on the right. Now, these are devices from a company called BTL Technologies. We went to, my business partner and I and our clinic manager and our wellness coordinator went to Portland, Oregon for this conference. And it was not our intent to buy anything while we were there. In fact, the team told me to make sure we didn't buy anything while we were there. But as we sat through some of the conference, the vice president of the company came up and started talking about these academic centers that they were looking to build. Now, BTL is not a small company. They're in 28 or so different countries. This is not a small company. And so when they started talking about, academic centers and explaining that they're involved with clinical studies and speaking engagements and trainings and all these different benefits of being an academic center, my business partner, she absolutely lit up because it's been something she's been talking about in her vision for quite some time to have an academic component of our clinic. And she's also the owner of the Hormones Clinic, our sister practice. So her eyes lit up, and it was pretty clear that she was excited about it. So we took a meeting with the VP to learn more about this. Now, what the catch was is that in order for us to be able to participate in these clinical studies and be able to present and get paid to do demonstrations and things, we needed to buy the full suite. So what you're seeing there on the right-hand side is the full suite. Now, we spent just over $1.3 million that day. It was not in the cards, but as we went through what we might do with these, and we found that each one of these pieces, even though we have a primary care and the other clinic being a hormones clinic, we evaluated each one of these things independently. And what we found was that the ExoMind, the one that's second to the right, that one is clinically proven and FDA cleared to be extremely helpful for people that have major depressive disorder, stress, anxiety, binge eating, a whole host of mental health related issues. And as we looked at our patient population, and we saw the overwhelming majority of our patients, when we fill out the PHQ-9 with them, they're rating at a place where they could benefit from this type of technology. So we did that same process with each one of these. The chair that's on the bottom right there, that one is the Emsella, and that thing is incredible for helping cure urinary incontinence. And we have patients that within 2 or 3 sessions are no longer peeing themselves when they sneeze or jump or run or cough. And it's incredible. And each one of these things absolutely fit within our patient population in ways that we could expand the care. So we made the investment. We became an academic center. Now we're partners with BTL on what's called the CARES program, where we offer totally free complimentary services to first responders with this technology. And so we pulled this into what we do. Our core focus incorporated and now incorporates these devices into our protocols, into the different ways that our providers care for our patients and the different care plans they present. That's how you determine whether or not you're going to pull something in or not. Now, if you're trying to make a stretch, if you're reaching for it, you will convince yourself of whatever you want, right? Like you are the best salesman in the history of the world when it comes to convincing yourself to do something or not to do something. And you need to understand if you're just blowing smoke, or you're trying to convince something, you're trying to make something work because you really want to, because it's cool, or for whatever reason, but really it's a good idea fairy, because that good idea fairy will blow money away. And you can bet, like with something like this, with the investment, with that monthly payment that we're making, which is over 20 grand a month, if we just wanted the technology and we thought it was cool, but really we didn't have the patient population for it, and it really wasn't like something that our patients would really benefit from and our providers would really rally around and be excited about, that would be money that would be flying out the door every single month. And quite frankly, is something that could put a clinic out of business. So you have to be very smart about this, not just with real big purchases, but with all purchases. And that's, again, having trusted advisors is helpful, because you want them to call out the good and the bad. You want them to shoot holes through your ideas and steel man them and really make sure that what you want. And when you start thinking about, well, what if, that it's going to be something that should be pulled into your core focus or not. Again, much more on this when we get into the 12-week program, which I'll talk about now. We still have one more strategy left on, doing more for less. So I'll explain to you the 12-week program, and then we'll move over to the doing more for less in growing your profits. But 12-week program essentially is covering a variety of the most important business strategies and success framework and blueprints that is not taught to you in school. Things that you really can't learn through ChatGPT. YouTube video is not going to teach you. You need these things understood and built and woven into your clinic, into your models, into your processes, and so on. So there's different topics with all these subtopics, right? But the main topics are leading and building an unstoppable team. You can imagine how much you'll get done and how much will be achieved with a truly fully bought in, unstoppable team. You've freedom through structure, diagnosing your practice, diagnosing other practices as well. So, when you're looking at your competition, one of the first things I see a lot of clinic owners do is they start reducing their pricing, or they start increasing the number of services and things that are factored in without truly understanding their COGS and their cost of goods sold, or just trying to undercut the competition and attract people in based on price alone. And people aren't buying things based on price alone. They're paying for solutions. So when you're diagnosing your practice and you're also diagnosing your competition, you're looking for the gaps, the things that they're not doing that you can do. And those things and doing them will set you apart from them. And we get into the weeds and really break down and dissect how to do that and what you in your particular clinics would want to do there. We look at your offers, your pricing, your sales. Again, this is always an area of opportunity, and it's something that I found is almost always one of the largest culprits into why clinics struggle, because their pricing and their offers isn't optimized, and then the sales process is compromised as well. So we break that down. You can see all the different subcategories there. But as you can imagine, and how Dr. Lyon, we went from 65,000 for concierge up to 100,000. We did several things in the background before we launched it, but when we launched it, it was a massive success. And history speaks for itself there. We're also going to get into how you get found. So, of course, we have the traditional marketing, but we really don't want to spend money if we don't have to get found. And there's all the traditional ways, there's the reviews and the testimonials and then the referrals and stuff, but it's much more than that. When it comes to marketing and being found, it's an art and a science. So we really get down and break up how to do that with different exercises that you'll do to really make it very specific to your clinic and your target audience and your offerings. So that's the piece about getting found. Then we have the marketing progression, really being able to fill up your calendar for the leads, getting that monster follow-up that's going, automating it all. And you'd be surprised at how much you can automate and take off your plate that you probably don't even realize, especially with our Ignition Systems CRM. And then the last piece of that 12-week program is systems and automations. We really want to be automating as much as possible. And you'd be really surprised at how much you are able to completely automate or delegate to a third party or a virtual assistant. There's virtual help out there that can be in your HIPAA compliant EHRs, your CRM, and for $8, $10 an hour, we get those implemented with you. And this is a good quote by Dr. Barefoot, who was a client. The constant 6-day work weeks had taken a toll on my family and my mental health. I tried everything to fix it on my own. With Matt's coaching, I was able to put systems and processes in place and grow my team. As a result, I work 3 days a week, allowing me to spend much more quality time with my family. And let me tell you that it was he was really challenged. He had spent many years working 6 days, charting at home, being physically present, but not mentally or emotionally present. And it had taken a toll on really the most important thing in his life, which was not his business. It was his wife and his kids. He needed to make a real change. It happened incrementally. It doesn't happen like overnight. And before he knew it, the turbulence was there and he needed to deal with it. And so we were able to implement many of these things in this 12-week program and get him to a place where he's only working 3 days a week and making more money in the process. We also are meeting once a week on live coaching calls. And there's the workbook that I mentioned as well. So these coaching calls, what we're doing is we're getting on and we are going for an hour doing Q&A stuff. So you'll go through the workbook throughout the week. There's all these videos that go along with it that walk you through each piece. And then we get on a call live to Q&A it and really talk through the different strategies and make sure everything is really buttoned up. For those that sign up, from this webinar, we're also doing a special deal with our HIPAA compliant CRM Ignition Systems. And you can see in the left-hand box there what it does. Your marketing automation, sales and funnels, landing pages, booking and calendar systeming, API integration, live chat with a AI, like a crazy awesome AI chat bot thing that you would never know you're texting back and forth with an AI. It's pretty awesome how advanced these things are getting. You have memberships and courses and programs that you can have within it, your own custom branding, your CRM and pipeline management. Those are all part of it. Those are all included with it. And normally we charge $297 a month for it, plus a $250 sign up fee, and that's all waived. So you get it for 90 days. You're saving over $1,000 for that. And because we need to only reserve these spots because we're doing these webinars and we only have so many spots allocated for each, we're only doing it for the first 10 that sign up. So be one of those 10, take advantage of the 10,000, not quite that, 1,050 in savings, and you're paying just $3,500. But here's what I will also tell you. You're not just getting the 12 weeks of the live coaching, the 3 months of the Ignition Systems, the system setup fee waived, but I also offer a 100% money back guarantee on this program. So if by the end of this program, you've done your part and you haven't doubled the amount of money that you invested. So if you haven't made $7,000 by way of money being saved in different areas where you plug holes and we reduce your operating expenses, and ways in which you've been able to make more money and increase the amount of money coming in through the different things we implement, I'll give you 100% money back guarantee. You'll get your $3,500 back. So this is truly a no risk program to you. You just have to do your part because there's only so much that I can do, but I have so much confidence in this whole program and what the outcomes are that I have no issue offering this guarantee. You just have to do your part. The recipe is absolute success. And it's a compounding effect, meaning that every month you will make more, you will save more. And by the end of the year, it scales out to be quite substantial into the hundreds of thousands plus. All right, now getting into the last piece of this equation is make more and do less. So you've got to know your COGS, you've got to know your niche, you've got to know your competition, price based on solution, and you have to land and expand. I've talked about the land and expand a bit, but to know your COGS, I'll give you an example. We had a client that really just was like, we should be making more money. We don't know why we're not making more money. We can't quite like figure it out, but we just know we should be making more money. And I had them do this COGS. We have a COGS worksheet. And if you go through the 12-week program, you'll get it. We'll go through it. And I had them go through this worksheet. And what they found was that they were doing a lot of labs. They were drawing a lot of labs each week and month. And they didn't realize that their pricing on their labs, that in most cases, they were actually losing money. But they were charging, by the time it was all said and done, factoring in the phlebotomist, the processing, the reading of the labs, the meeting with the patients, like when they factored in each individual cost associated with their labs, they were losing money in the majority of the cases. And in some cases, they were breaking even, but in no case were they actually making money. And then they thought in every case they were making money. So when we did all the fixes to it and we first identified like this is a root problem that needs to be fixed, when we fixed that root problem, what we're able to do is clean up all of the areas where they were losing money and incorporate the ways in which they would make money. It led to just over $8,000 a month that they started making based on the amount of labs they were doing and how much they were seeing out the door. Now, when they did the math on how long it had been going on for, the amount of money was substantial and they were quite upset about it, but they did the right thing. They brought me in and we were able to figure it out. So they just didn't know. They phenomenal on the patient care side. They just didn't know how to do their COGS correctly and how to price it correctly. So that's something that we'll go through in the program and will certainly help probably every single one of you. I've yet to work with a client where they had their COGS so dialed in that we found no opportunity in them. You also have to know your niche. A lot of people, their quote unquote niche are well-to-do men or women or both in a certain age range, but you have to know your niche so much better than that. Everybody's trying to attract in the big fish, the people that have the money and are ready to just say yes today and take action. Everybody's looking for them. Everybody's marketing to them. There's a way to actually get more of them by knowing your niche better and to be doing things differently than what everybody else is doing. Knowing your competition, I mentioned that, knowing what they're not doing as well as what they're doing so that you can backfill what they're not doing and fill in those gaps and stand out as a result, increasing what you charge instead of decreasing and bringing your numbers down. And then based on your pricing is what you're basing your pricing off of the solutions that you offer. So people are paying for solutions. They're paying for the ability for them to get what they don't have. And that is the value that you bring to them. The better you are at providing solutions, the faster you are at providing solutions, the more money people are happy to pay you for it. And there is no shortage of people that will pay an absolute premium for you to be able to help them, as long as you can actually help them get the solutions that they want, and you can do it quicker than anybody else and better than anybody else. You will have no problem finding people to say yes. You'll have no problem with people referring to you. You'll have no problem with 5-star reviews. Like, all of your problems start to evaporate when it comes to your sales and your revenue when you are solution oriented, that you are pricing based on solution and delivery of that solution. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the land and expand, to where you are not trying to just, take sniper shots at a small population of people within your niche, but actually be able to help many more people in a way that makes sense for your business, in a way that doesn't handcuff you and isn't problematic to your growth. So we land and expand within that framework. Much more of that is dug into when we get to the 12-week course. Now, just to recap, your EHR is not a CRM. You need expertise. You need to be surrounded by experts in every facet of your life, right? If you need to be humble enough to know when you don't know something, or when there's other people around you or other people out there that know better than you, and you need to get closer to them. That proximity is very powerful. And so know when you need help in a certain area, clinically and professionally, on the business side of it. Hopefully, I've demonstrated to you that if there are several pieces that you don't have in place, in several areas where you've said, well, that makes sense, but we're not doing that, then you understand that I am an expert on the business side, not on being a clinician, on the business side, that can help you advance your practice into a much better, much more profitable place. You need a team. You cannot be all things. You cannot be the CEO, the manager, and the technician. You will burn out. You will not be successful. And if that's in a place that you're at now, you need to be implementing the things that will get you out of that, or else you're going to get stuck and ultimately likely fail. Avoid the good idea fairy. You need to have structure. You need to have systems. You need to have processes. You need to know your numbers. You need to price based on solutions. And then you need to avoid opportunity costs, right? So you could have spent the time here that you've been watching this webinar in a variety of other places. But let me assure you that this time was well spent if you take action on even on the things that we have covered here today. If you implement the things that we've talked about or that I've shared with you today, this will you will benefit from it. And there are other things that are tempting to go and do. And so I applaud you for being here. I applaud you for sticking to this end of the webinar, because doing other things would yield a lower ROI, would cost you more money. It costs you money. It costs you time. It costs you energy. It costs you mental health to pick the wrong path. And there's a saying that you have to choose your hard. You choose your hard. Choose the hard thing now and get the easy thing later, or choose the easy thing or the hard thing now and get easy later. Say that right? Choose a hard thing now and get easy later, or choose easy now and get the hard thing later. That's what I meant to say if I didn't say it right. So choose your hard, now or later, but it's coming. You're going to have the opportunity to scan these QR codes. These QR codes will take you to the registration page. If you already have an incredible business structure in place, you found that nothing that I'm bringing forward is helpful to you on the business front, but you do need a CRM. You can scan that QR code on the bottom for the HIPAA compliant thing. You do not get the 3 months for free. That's $297 a month for a HIPAA compliant CRM. And there's all kinds of other benefits to it you'll see on the page. But for the rest of you, register for the 12-week program. Take advantage of the 3 months free. It's for the first 10 people from this webinar that are signing up. So don't sit on your heels. It says 900 in savings, but it's $1,050 in savings is what you get in total. Plus, again, it's a 100% guarantee that by the end of it, if you haven't doubled the money that you invested, you're getting that back. It's in the paperwork. It's in the agreement. I am held to it. You are held to doing your part on it. That's important. But otherwise, questions that you have, make sure you put those in the chat. And that way we can go through them and respond back to you. Thank you so much for tuning into this this webinar today. I really look forward to working with you and to start this 12-week program. I guarantee you're going to find it to be massively beneficial and really be a turning point in your life personally and professionally. And so with that, thanks again. I look forward to seeing you all in the course very soon.